In this tutorial, we'll cover how you can use custom alert routing rules to write conditions to perform pre-incident operations like alert suppression, escalation policy override, user assignment, message customization, tag assignments, and other actions. Alert rules are a very powerful feature that lets you create rules depending on various alert parameters like name or message or the alert payload. And you can take a couple of actions like you can change the alert type to either critical or warning or info or acknowledged or resolved. You can route it to a particular user, or you can suppress the incident or change the urgency, or you can route it to a very specific escalation policy than the escalation policy that is defined on the service to which the integration is linked to. So let's just go back and see what kind of alerts were created. So as you can see right here, there was an alert that was basically the alerts that were created by this particular integration. It created two incidents, 1 and 2. Now all these alerts are basically called name errors, if let's say that I want to create an alert rule that suppresses every single sentry incident or every single sentry error that contains the term name error, so I can just go ahead and create this alert rule, and I'm going to call it name error suppression, and I'm going to say if the message contains the term name error, then I'm going to create an action, and I'm going to suppress this particular alert. So let's go to our console and create a dummy error that will then be captured by Zenduty. So I just created a dummy error called name error. Now if I go back to incidents, or if I go back rather to the alert log, I'll see that the alert that was triggered by this sentry error has been suppressed. So it did not create any incident. Rather, the alert stayed critical, but it was not associated with any incident. So it did not. It basically suppressed the incident. Let's go back to our sentry and see if our error shows up right here. Right. So the name error, global name v2 is not defined, did not create an incident right here. So let's go back and maybe play around with our alert rules a little bit. So maybe let's try adding another integration. So this time I'm going to add an API integration, and we're going to play around with it via our console. So I'm going to go ahead and configure this API. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to clean slate our console. So let's go ahead and add a couple of alert rules right here. In this alert rule, what we're going to do is we're going to play around with the payload of the alert. So every alert basically sends a whole bunch of data, as we saw in our previous in our previous videos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an alert that will create an incident. So I'm going to create, I'm going to send some payload along with this this API alert. So I'm going to call this payload, maybe make it a really simple dictionary, and I'm going to give it a value, a key value a and 1. So I'm going to send this payload, and okay, so let's check the content. Seems like the integration has been created, so let's go back and check the alerts. Yep, so incident number 3 has been created right here. Now if I go into the incident payload, as you can see, the payload contains our key value pair that we just defined. Alright, let's just go ahead and acknowledge and resolve this incident. Cool. All right, so let's play around with the payload a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if our payload value, that is a, if that value is greater than 6, let's go ahead and suppress the particular alert. So when we do a payload search, we always start with the dollar value, and then the dollar is basically the root path, and from there we traverse the JSON. So I'm going to say if $.a is greater than 6, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to suppress the alert. Okay, let's go ahead and maybe play around with a. I'm going to give it a value called 3. So let's go ahead and see if this creates a particular incident. So since 3 is less than 6, it should create an incident. And as you can see, the incident has been created with our payload a equal to 3. Check the alert logs. It's yeah, all right, here we are. Awesome. So let's go ahead and maybe add a value that is greater than 6. Maybe let's put a as 10 and see what happens. So as you can see, there was no incident created. If I go back to the alert log, yep, so this incident was suppressed because the value of a was greater than 6, and therefore Zenduty suppressed the alert and did not create an incident for that alert. Great. So this is one condition. So let's add another condition. If let's say that we're going to add an OR condition. So if let's say that the payload is greater than 6, or if the message maybe contains the term if the message contains the term XYZ, right, then you go ahead and assign a user Kevin Malone, right? So all incidents that contain wherein a is greater than 6, or if that message contains the term XYZ, will be assigned to Kevin instead of the on-call engineer that is associated with the escalation policy. So I'll just go ahead and save this rule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with this payload, and let's see if it is assigned to Kevin. So this time it won't be suppressed since we changed our alert actions. Now if I go ahead and yep, as expected, there's a new incident was created. So if I go into the alert logs, you see that the payload that I just sent, wherein a was 10, greater than 6, and so it assigned that incident to Kevin. Now if I go ahead and put a as 3 and play around with the other condition. Which was the alert rule. The message contains the term XYZ. So I'm just going to put an XYZ somewhere in the message, and hopefully even a new incident would be created and also assigned to Kevin right here. So the alert rules are extremely powerful way of cutting down the noise and redirecting incidents to other people depending on the payload that is sent by the integration. You can also sort of do a couple of other actions. You can change the alert type, or you can change the urgency. So depending on the parameters, let's say that your memory utilization is not critical, maybe it's around 60 or 70%, you can just change the urgency to low, so that whomsoever is assigned that incident, it will basically follow the low priority, the low urgency notification rules instead of the high urgency one. So by default, I mean, for every single integration, the default urgency is high, but you can also set it as low. So you can play around with the urgency values depending on the kind of payload that you get, right? You can also sort of play around with other parameters like the time when it was created. So if let's say that this incident comes in between 9 p.m. and 5 a.m. maybe you can change the urgency type. So if let's say that you want certain issues to have low urgency during certain times of the day and high urgency during other times of the day, you can also sort of play around with those values as well, right? Even day of the week, if let's say that if it's a weekend or a weekday, you can sort of depending on the day of the week, you can change the urgency type, or you can suppress the incidents depending on your business use case. Now if you want to see the latest payload for any single alerts, just click on the latest payloads button, and it'll help you sort of navigate the payload so that you can construct your payload path parameter right here. This was pretty much the alert rule feature. I mean, the possibilities are pretty much endless right here. So hopefully this will help you guys cut down the noise and route your alerts and incidents a little more intelligently or in a more methodical way. Thank you for listening.